Hello, welcome back to the Workshop of Wood Spun Round. This is Doug, and I am so glad to have you with me today. Was looking for something to fill a gap in some time, and so came down to the shop, grabbed up this little piece of cherry, and we're going to make a little vase with it. I've got something in mind. I mentioned the other day trying to do a little, just a rudimentary kind of a pyrography design on a piece. That's what we're going to do here today. We're going to turn this nice little pot-like thing, kind of a Native American Indian type of a pot, and then do a little pyrography on it. Not trying to imitate or mimic what the Indians did back in, 200 years ago, but or more, but just my take on that type of a piece. So I'm just using the Easy Wood Tools Easy Rougher here, the full size one, to take this down from being basically a square. It wasn't quite a square, more of a trapezoid, but we're going to take it down to round, and I'm going to use this tool just to make it easier. You can see it's done a pretty good job taking it down fairly quickly. And we're just kind of smoothing it up, getting the last of the flat spots off for right now. Some have given the Easy Wood Tools a bad name. They their big thing is, oh, it's just a scraper. Well, yes, it's a scraper, but it's a different kind of scraper. These carbide cutters have been researched and angled and ground to the place that very few other cutters around, if any, have been looked at. These cutters seem to stay sharp longer than any other cutters on the market. I've not seen a cutter yet that will stay as sharp as long as the cutters from Easy Wood Tools. Yes, they cost a little more, but they last a lot longer. And then also you can, when they do start to get a little dull, you can always loosen the set screw that's in the center, rotate it 90 or even 180 degrees if you want to, and you've got a sharp cutter again until you get the rest of it dulled out. And then you simply take the screw out, throw the cutter away, put a new cutter on, go to town. It's that quick, that easy. Instead of having all the grinding equipment and all of that, you just simply change the cutters. You have a sharp cutter back on again. I don't do everything with the Easy Wood Tools, but on this particular piece, I'm going to do the vast majority of the work with my Easy Woods. You see right there, I've changed over to a 1/2-inch bowl gouge. This is one of my two favorite tools in my arsenal, and I use it a lot. Doing some shear scraping there, getting some ridges that it's purely my fault. Wasn't the tool's fault, not Easy Wood's fault. My fault. I left some ridges there, so I'm just kind of getting some of those ridges out, smoothing out the curve, getting it where I want it before I go on to the next process in turning this particular piece. Coming down, kind of shaping the neck, getting it where I want it, kind of as a final. You see there, I've got some waste wood still at the top end of that neck that I'll have to get off. But I'm sanding it down here, starting with 80 grit, going all the way to 360. Really don't have to start with the 80 grit. I could start it at 100, but that's just where I choose to start. Got it all sanded. I'm going to put a couple of boundary lines and do some texturing with my pyrography tool between the two boundary lines. There's the bottom, here's the top. And then there I'm just using a little 1/4-inch skew that I have primarily for this purpose, just for making marks on my pieces. Bring you back here. Well, we're going to burn those lines first. That burning wire is an old guitar string that my son had taken off the guitar, and I put a couple of small handles, just drilled a hole through a couple of pieces of pin blank, and just wrapped it around, kind of knotted it so that it stays there. Gives me a good way to hold on to it. What I'm doing here, I'm using the indexing on the lathe to just make some divisional marks all the way around between those two lines. There is there's a hole in that headstock, and behind that hole there is a numbered wheel, so to speak. It's probably the side of a pulley or something. Anyway, the indexing is there, and those index holes are numbered. I was just looking to see if possibly I could see them, but without getting an extra light down, I could not. So I'm just feeling every other index mark, drawing a line. I've turned it around here, put the piece directly in the chuck, and we're working again with a 1/2 inch bowl gouge, taking that excess wood off the very top, just working it down. Once I get it kind of worked down, I'll see how long I want it. Not really sure how long I want that neck. So you can see there I've pretty well decided it will actually get a little shorter than this. The wood decided to kind of split out at the very top. I don't know if I don't think I had a catch. But anyway, it chipped out, and so I made it shorter. You can see there it's a good bit shorter. But I've got one of my Easy Wood hollowers. This is the number 3. If I'm not mistaken, this is the full-size number 3 hollower that I was using there just to get that upper section hollowed out. But I've got the pyrography tool here. I've got it turned up fairly high, and it's making a good bit of smoke as I draw these lines. I'm not going to show you all of this because it's just kind of, here I do this and I repeat it all the way around. Started making some diagonals and corners, and again, repeated that all the way around. Ended up making diagonals in all 4 corners, and then a couple of lines along the sides, a couple of lines along the ends, and that ends up being my pattern. There we're just making some lines across the ends. You can see that wire glowing. I've got some power going through it. Seemed like it was probably too hot, but it didn't follow the grain quite as badly when I had it turned up. Just hitting that with a little 320 just to knock off the excess soot. And now I'm giving it a little bit of an alcohol bath just to get any dust and soot out of the pores in the wood. You can see that alcohol dries very, very quickly. And I can come in with my very next thing. I believe I'm going to use some sanding. Yes, sanding sealer is next. I use the Deft lacquer-based sanding sealer. I'm not sponsored by them at all. I've used Deft lacquer sanding sealer for a long, long time, many, many years, and it just seems to work very well. And I just haven't really wandered away from that particular product. I will tell you it's getting harder to find. I'm having to get it directly from the company. Worldwide Paint Supply, I believe it is. To the Worldwide Paint Supply or World Paint Supply, one of the two. You can find them with a Google search and able to order from them, directly from them, the Def sanding sealer, either in the cans, quart cans, or in the spray. Axe abrasive paste is next after the sanding sealer. It takes me from the 320 that I sanded to on up to about 1,000 grit without all the dust, without having to worry about breathing in all those fine particles. And so I'm a believer in the Axe product. Axe does sponsor me, and I am grateful for that sponsorship. They help me out quite a bit. After the Axe, I wanted to embellish this burned area. And so the Hampshire Sheen silver embellishing wax is what we're using here. I debated between silver and gold, and the gold won out. Probably would have looked very good with the gold as well. But I'm just rubbing it in. I'm trying to fill all of that burned area. There you see I've burned it, and filled it with the wax. Now I'm going to buff it, take off all the excess wax. That also leaves a nice wax coating on the entire piece as far as I rub it out. But I'm going to come back over it with now the Axe Carnauba wax. This is the restoring polishing wax that Axe puts out. Very good, high Carnauba content wax. Really being a little bit light in this area, this embellished area. Most of the wax was put on above the embellished area. And the reason why I'm being a little light with it over the embellished area is because the wax could possibly pull that embellishing wax out of those little grooves. Those are not real deep, but I didn't want to pull any of it out. So anyway, we've put it on. Now we're buffing it off, and you can see we're getting just a real nice, not a super glossy finish, but it is a high sheen. Tell you what, the piece feels really good in the hand too. It's got a nice wax finish, but you can still feel a bit of the wood texture. We've not filled that in to the point where it feels like plastic anymore. It still feels like wood. That's kind of what I'm after with this piece. Not going real deep inside, just the inside of the neck. I've turned it around now. I've got it stuck down onto a piece of a jam chuck. This is just basically a long stick. It's been tapered down, rounded over on the very end so that pieces like this can slip over it, be held securely while I turn the tenon off. I'll turn it down very small, get my bottom all prepared, sanded, all of those kinds of things before I use a chisel to take off the final nub. But I'll turn that nub down. There won't be a whole lot of it left. Then when I do take it off of this jam chuck, well, you'll see it here in just a minute. I'll use my chisel to finish it off. It comes off very easily. Just changing over, using my detail gouge here just to make that nub a little bit smaller. Smoothing out the bottom in the center there. Using my 1/4 inch skew to make 3 lines so that I can put do my signing and the marks on it that I typically put on. Starting with the Phil Anderson technique of holding the spindle gouge, the detail gouge with my right hand, my left hand is on the switch, but this nub is still just a bit thick. It's so short, it's hard to get in and make it very small. And so I'm going to give up on that here in just a moment. Typically it has already popped off by now. There, no, we're going to try it a little more. See if we can get in there and scrape a little bit with this detail gouge. I say detail gouge, it's really a spindle detail gouge. It's a spindle gouge. It has a very shallow flute, sharpened like a bowl gouge, but it's very long, very sharp pointed, so that I can get in and do real fine details on things. But again, we're in there just holding it against the bottom of the bowl, holding the bevel against the bottom of the bowl with my right hand. Now, watch how quick this comes off. Almost scared me. Good thing I was holding it down low, but I knew that that was a problem or a possibility of it popping loose like that. So we've sanded that little center part, put my mark on the bottom, and now we're just giving a little wax. So tell you what, if you want to try the Axe products, you can get it from axewoodpaste.com. When you check out where it has a discount code, put in Doug15, you'll get 15% off. And so that'll help a little bit, make it a little easier for you to try it out. I do appreciate you being here and watching with me. We'll have some stills here in just a moment so you can see it up close and personal. Thanks for being with me. I hope you'll come back again. Until we meet again here in the shop, I hope you're able to spin them round.